Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. Sister, how you doing? Hey sister.
Hey, sister. Man, I'm doing fine. I just a lot of other people we got to ask questions about how they doing.
Ooh, girl, look, if this ain't been this week been the longest year of my life.
Yeah, it's like I said on the post. This is just the beginning of the week. These last few hours just been crazy.
Yes, well, thank you for tuning in. One of our favorite sisters. Hey, Jody Joe, how you doing? Thanks for being here this evening. Please, as in typical Hey Sister fashion, we ask that you like, share, follow, subscribe. Let the people know that you're tuning in live right now to Hey Sister. Make sure you send them the YouTube link so that they can subscribe to the channel, never miss an episode. Also, let them know they can find our website and they can go back and watch past episodes that they may have missed, as well as check out some of the merchandise we might have, and yeah, like and be ready to join the conversation in the comments because let me tell y'all right now, we got lots to talk about tonight. So, sister, do you want me to run these controls back here, or what you want? What you want
I
to
knew I was just trying to drop
do?
the links back in for you to see. That is not my forte, and obviously we don't have a production assistant tonight. So
Well, the production assistant says she is graduating to a different place in her life. Maybe we gonna see. I don't know. She might be back, but she's had a very busy week, and so we want to acknowledge her, congratulate her. Orientation week was a success, and yeah, lots of good things are happening in the lives of our PA. But y'all, we got a
congratulations.
lot to get into.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, we know that there was an attempt on one life, but there were a few lives that we have actually lost. Quite a few people that we've known in from the sports world to the entertainment world, that have passed on. So,
So
lot.
then let's get into that. So because there was a lot of over this weekend, it was just like striking, like the number. Um, so let's start with Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Dr. Ruth Westheimer. If
Yes.
you so really her fame kind of in the late 80s and the 90s is when her fame was kind of the peak and at its height, and she was uh sex therapist, and she got on, and I guess at that time she was in her 60s, and she was talking about things in a very matter of fact way, and in a very a way that really gives us of life lessons. And man, her way about her tone, her energy, it was just so beautiful because it was so much in the teaching mode. We learned so much from Dr. Ruth. We learned so much from Dr. Ruth if you were willing and open enough to get the lesson. And I would say I learned a lot from Dr. Ruth. I don't know. What did you learn from Dr. Ruth?
I don't know what I learned specifically from Dr. Ruth. I'll just say that I remember, when Dr. Ruth would speak and she would be on television, like you said, very matter of fact, straightforward, educational. But of course, at that time, even in the 90s, if you will, there was still a lot of taboo. I mean, obviously, now we have rappers letting us know the color of their buttocks and other parts and places. But at that time, it
That we
was
didn't ask for.
that we did not ask to
Yeah,
know. And
yeah,
I
yeah. Uh-huh.
could have gone my whole life not knowing. But now, so at that time, Dr. Ruth obviously was considered a little bit taboo, but really and truly was educating on things that sadly we need a lot more education on, because again, when we listen to some of the music and we consume what we consume on television. There's clearly a lot of misinformation and miseducation going on. So Dr. Ruth was, as a woman, was in a place, in a space that many women didn't occupy. So I would just say rest in peace to her, and hopefully there are others that will take up the mantle to educate instead of sensationalize and like make sex weird, because I feel like now we've made it so weird.
Well, and I think you make a very, very strong and valid point about that gap, that void in education. And as we see tides shifting and turning politically, and when I say political, I'm talking about the global politics, but I'm really also talking about in education and in schools, and people unwilling to talk about pleasure. People unwilling to, people are still not teaching their children the proper names of their body parts and the function of those body parts. There are many men who still not know the difference between a urethra hole, a vagina hole, and an anal hole. Like, we got problems, people. And she had a lot of, so go back and listen to old shows that she was on. Go back and read old clips. And if you learn something from her, drop it in the chat. Lakeisha's joining in. Hey girl, how you doing? And she also says she lived her life to 96. What is a blessing? And I learned a lot too early from her. But you know what? I don't think it's ever too early, because it's context, right? And so I think that there is power in certain knowledge that can be customized to your specific age demographic and point where you are in development. But it also always has to be honest. And right now, we're still dealing with a lot of lack of honest truth information, just even about our body function, about development, about what sex is, about what sex isn't. I mean, you know, yeah, we still have a lot of work to do. And I just thank her for being the trailblazer that she was and living the life that she led. We have another trailblazer in the area of fitness. And that's one Mr. Richard Simmons. And honey, I remember the high shorts. High pants, what some people would say. His curly fro.
From New Orleans, born in
like my fro. Yes, but man, Richard Simmons was everywhere, and really got baby sweating to the oldies. And right now, I'm like, I need to be sweating to some oldies right now, right? Because how we define oldies has shifted too. Hello. But what do you remember about Richard Simmons?
Well, like you said, I mean, the short shorts, the curly fro, being, like this larger than life figure in the fitness world, but also having quite a lot of appearances on popular television shows and movies and things of that nature. I think what was interesting is that they did a documentary or recently, I feel like it was TMZ. I don't remember, but they were like, what happened to Richard Simmons? Because it felt like he just kind of fell off the face of the earth. We didn't know what happened to him. He kind of became a recluse and was being cared for, it seems, by his housekeeper or what have you. And so it seems that, he was having some difficulty as he was getting older, and with just the concept of getting older, especially having been somebody who was, in that fitness world. And so, I think it's very sad, because the thing about getting old, of course, is not for the faint of heart, but at the same time, what's the alternative? So we can do it gracefully or not. But I think that I hope that he had some peace, because from that documentary, as big and larger than life as he appeared, the documentary really seemed to say that was really very much a character. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and who he really was. He was actually very closed off. So hopefully he found some peace in his latter days, and that now he is resting in peace. And 76, I mean, again, you talk about sweating to the oldies when we start defining what's old and what's new and what have you. I don't know anymore. Is 76 old or not?
Yeah. Well, I will say this. We recently I've been in Louisiana, been in Mississippi, I've been around the world, and I can't find my baby, honey. And we've had a lot of conversations, and my husband and I were having a conversation, and I told him that one of my, when we had our family reunion last year, I think I told you as well, one of my takeaways was about mobility. Like, I want to be able to remain mobile. It was very clear, very stark. And that's one of the reasons why that was the VIP theme at my conference, about activate your abilities, mobility, stability, flexibility, mental agility. Like, we got to activate the abilities. And the key takeaway from this trip is, we talk about getting older and dying. Those things are inevitable. Old is the goal for me, because we've already claimed to be centenarians, right? So old is the goal, unless the Lord says otherwise. But really thinking about how we want to live. And I think this next person who transitioned really leaned into how she wanted to live. And she's been going through, and that's one Miss Shannon Doherty of 90210 fame. But if you like me and you a Little House on the Prairie fan, you see that second iteration of Little House? Shannon Doherty was a primary figure and a principal character actress in that. And she was Almanzo and Beth's niece. So, y'all don't watch Little House and just tell you about Little House. But this sister went through. But she made a decision about how she wanted to live. Even though she was faced with these, multiple bouts with cancer, she decided how she wanted to live. And I just think that there's so much power in that. And so definitely rest in power to her, rest in peace to her. And as each of us approach this life, this thing called life, and each and every day we get an opportunity to wake up and to choose what we want that day to be like. Now, will things come our way? We're going to have some curveballs. We're going to have some fastballs. We're going to have to duck and move and a whole lot of things. But it's really making up in our mind about how we want to live. It's so very important, because the death is going to be inevitable. We don't know the time, the date, or the place. But then how you want to live that day, even on the day you die, how you want to live that day, Yeah. So rest in power to her. What are some of your thoughts and our memories about Shannon Doherty?
Well, of course, Brenda Walsh on 90210. Obviously, if you are like me, you grew up in that era where you just you did not know that people could live like this. And so it was always sort of this fantasy to see Brenda and the crew from Beverly Hills be these kids, these teenagers. They were, navigating life, albeit in a very different existence than the rest of us. But, we kind of, you look at that kind of thing and like, oh, wow, what would it be like to grow up like that and to have these kind of luxuries or what have you. But the truth is, that was a character. And so, of course, we know a few years back, Luke Perry passed away, who was one of her co-stars. And then, of course, Shannon Doherty has passed at 53 years old. And I dropped in one of the quotes she had said to People magazine back in November of last year, where she was still working. It started off with a breast cancer diagnosis. it spread to her brain and then to her bones. But she was like, I'm not done with living. I'm not done with loving. I'm not done with creating. I'm not done with hopefully changing things for the better. I'm not done. And I think that one of the things that, resonated with you and I a few years ago when Aeneas Williams was being inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame was Die Empty. And so I hope that she was able to say that she died empty.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and then, finally, this news broke today. I got a text this morning. Let's see, we got a comment here. It says a lot of 90210 was filmed in Pasadena, Altadena. We almost crashed our car when we drove by the Walsh family home while they were filming, and Luke Perry was standing outside. Swoon. Yes. I'm sure if you lived in that area, grew up in that area, you probably had a lot of swoon worthy moments, right? But I got a text this morning about the transition of this young man because he is a Louisiana native, and that is Jacoby Jones, who was a part of the Baltimore Ravens, who I think there's still reports that are coming out in terms of what the confirmation is. And I got the text from, one of my friends, like, you remember such and such who worked at the financial aid office? This is her son. And I was like, yeah, like I know this name. Like this name was very clear and prominent in my head when it was called. And all I could do was just go, dang, you and I recently have been grappling with people in their 30s and 40s and like, heart attacks, cancer diagnoses, accidents, like very much a proliferation where we've just both been like, wait a minute, what? Like, how are you having been at the peak of health, right? How does this happen to someone who has been probably at the ultimate peak of physical fitness and health to transition like this? But again, that's why the mysteries of life, we don't know. And it's one of the mysteries of life that we don't know. And but what we do know for sure is each day that we have an opportunity to live, we got to choose how we want to live that day. And I pray that he lived well that day before he went and ultimately went to sleep and did not wake up.
Yeah, I just saw that it said he passed away peacefully at his home in New Orleans. I guess I didn't realize he was back in New Orleans, but met him some years ago at the ESPY Awards pre-party, and was like, hey, you from the hood, so let's take a picture together. And we took a picture together. He seemed like a nice young man. I believe he was also on Dancing with the Stars, if I recall. And so, I think he won actually. So, yeah, it seemed like a real cool, down to earth young man. Obviously, he was known for his performances in the Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens. So, this one was absolutely a shock. And like you said, 40 years old. Now, I know for sure that is not old, and if it at best it's middle age, if you are looking at the average life expectancy of a man. Now I know it's a little different for Black men, but still it's about middle age. And so this is certainly a shock. And like you said, especially if it's somebody who seemingly was physically fit. So I'm very sorry to hear this news.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll just say rest in power, rest in peace to him. For his loved ones, his family, as they go through this transition. Just focus on the love, because the one thing that we know for sure is that the love endures regardless, and the love will stand the test of time. And grief comes in like a wave, and it washes over us. It impacts us. It comes in and out. And right now it's very high and very strong. And really for all the people who we talked about tonight, for those who love them,
Yes.
for those who were close to them, for those who even did not know them but admired them from a distance. We have to give space and allow for that grieving. And even us who are like very distant, when we hear these stories or when we see these in the news, that people who their existence impacted our existence through the areas or the formative years of our life, it still has an impact on us. And we have to allow ourselves the time, the space for healing, and allow whatever that grieving process looks like. Those of us who are still at a distance, allow it to happen, because it still is a grieving process.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to all those individuals and anybody who has. I mean, there's so many other people who have tragically passed on. So rest in peace.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know which one of these topics you won't go to first, but you tell me which one you won't go to first, because
there's actually three.
Yes.
There's another one. Girl, whatever order of operation you want. I mean, we listen. I named it IK YFL for a reason. Because I don't know anymore.
Listen. Okay. Well, we got to go to the obvious, right? Let's go to the obvious first and then work our way backwards. How about that?
Sure.
All right. So the obvious. Yesterday at a rally for the former president who is seeking office to become our next president, Donald John Trump, there was a shooting. And it is being said that it is definitely, the FBI has said was an assassination attempt. The shooter was killed, and an audience member, someone who was participating in that rally, was killed. Others were injured, and the former president, Donald John Trump, was grazed by a bullet. There are so many ways that we can go with this story. So I'm gonna say, for those of y'all who watching, what questions do you have? Because we gonna try to go in the many directions. But please ask your questions or drop your comments in there, because we want to make sure we take conversation where you want to go. I am grateful that bullet was a graze, because to witness an assassination is not nothing I want to do.
Right.
We think about our parents and those of the generation who actually witnessed the assassination of a John F. Kennedy, of a Robert Kennedy, of a Malcolm X, of a Martin Luther King. Even those of our generation who watched as a space shuttle exploded in the sky. To be a witness and bear witness to someone's death in a very tragic way is not something I ever want to be a part of.
Right.
So I want to start with that. Yeah, like Jody said, I'm glad it was just a graze. I'm glad too, because that's not something I want to bear witness and be party to. there was a lot of things coming in, like, well, what was it? Was it staged? Da, da, da. The fact that that's the first thing that came to a lot of minds says a lot to me about not just who we are, but who he is.
Mhm.
Um, and then as the day wore on, or the evening wore on, and then this morning wore on. I mean, before the evening could end, I was like, this hypocrisy, the irony, the gaslighting, and the spin of it all. Well, the hypocrisy and irony, like I said, was as thick as some Allerga syrup. And if you've ever had Allerga cane syrup, you know how thick that is. But the spin and the gaslighting was, baby, it was as fast as an Olympic sprinter, honey. It came out of them blocks on that 100 meters and was like, boom, 9.4 seconds. Because the spin to the rhetoric of the Democrats and what have you. And I was like, well, wait a minute, hold up. To me, this was very much. I was like, when Heather Heyer was hit by that car, when he stood up there and said they're good people on both sides, when Nancy Pelosi's husband was hit in the head and they were making jokes, now you want everybody else to like have not seen and witnessed your behavior and have sympathy and empathy. Man, it don't sit well with my spirit and soul, and it just don't work that way. So when you talk about divisiveness, the things that you have sown has been so divisive
Yeah.
and ugly and mean. And even in, Joe Biden did what Joe Biden was supposed to do. I called him immediately. I tried to reach him, and then I finally got him on the phone. I've done everything that he's supposed to do as the president of the United States and as a human being. And then for people to say that he had something to do with this, it's absolutely freaking absurd and disgusting.
Yeah.
And then have the audacity to try to gaslight me, Mr. Speaker of the House, or gaslight me and say, oh, it's the rhetoric. No, boo, y'all been doing this too long. Stop it. And stop playing in my face.
Yeah,
that's one angle. That's my first angle of this conversation.
All right. All right. Well, let's see where we take it. I was looking for this something that came up on my LinkedIn, and it was really good, but I can't seem to find it right now. I'll keep strolling, but scrolling, not strolling, scrolling. Anyway, so here's what I'll say. Number one, to your point, happy that it was a grace, right? Number two, I'll say that I take no delight in watching people die. And I think back to summer 2020 and the number of people who watched George Floyd be murdered on television and or on video, and the number of people who watched a few years before that in Ferguson, Michael Brown's body lying in the street. I take no delight in seeing people lose their lives. And even though I know that there are a lot of people who watched George Floyd lose his life and they felt nothing about it, no, I would not wish that on my worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was nothing that one would take any delight in to see anybody lose their life, particularly not in that manner. Okay. So that's that. I am outdone by how quickly people were still politicizing the moment.
Mm-hmm.
How quickly I heard those who were at the rally saying things like, I think this is why we need to reelect him, because we need more police. I am clear that there were police officers at this place. There were a lot of police officers at this.
Every level of law enforcement you can think
Exactly.
was there.
Exactly. And what grinds my gears is that I was just in Dallas over the week. Mm-hmm. We had a visit from our vice president, mm-hmm. Mrs. Kamala Harris, our sorority sister. This is the second time that we've had that experience. Mm-hmm. But I also saw her earlier this year here in Phoenix. When I tell you the levels and layers of scrutiny and security that one must go through, mm-hmm. I recognize that he is not the sitting president and that he is not the sitting vice president, but I still believe that there were layers upon layers of security. So how is it that someone could climb on top of a building, some 300, less than 400, this is how they describe it, less than 400 feet away from where he was speaking, mm-hmm. to climb on top of a building with an AR gun? And people are like, yeah, we saw it, we were appointed. Come on.
They saw him scaling the building with a gun, and they were telling the police, look at this person on top of this building.
Listen, I ain't about to sit up here and get all into the conspiracy theories about what was staged, what's not staged, this, that. I'm not about to do that. What I am going to say, though, is people are quick to say, why y'all always making it about race? Why y'all always making it about race? Well, I have no other thing to make it about when I know what I've been through in order to be in the same space. I know what I've seen in order to be in the same space. You saw President Obama. We went to the inauguration. We know there were snipers everywhere.
Every building. It was like, oh, they ain't playing up in here.
No,
and in 2016, I chose not to participate. I chose to watch it online when Kamala Harris came to Orlando for our sorority international conference, because I didn't want to go through the line, in the hassle, in the scans, in the pat down, in the looking in my bag, and all the things that happen.
Right. So,
and the perimeter was large.
Yeah. And so that's why it is hard for me not to make it about race, because I'm like, it really feels like you all went out there, and because it was in Butler, Pennsylvania,
it was in the country.
It was in the country. It was in
Trump country. They voted for him before. Yeah.
Right. Everybody looks, or predominantly looks, the same. I feel like y'all underestimated it. Because as much as you've thrown out Chicago, and we heard that so many times the first time he ran, Chicago. As much as you've thrown out other major cities, and you've talked about the violence and what have you, all I can say is it looks like the team decided we're amongst friends, we're amongst family, we can let our guard down. Mm. And I'm not sure how else to see that. Because again, I've done this. I've been through this. So how do we get fewer than 400 feet away? And people saying they saw somebody scaling the building? How did they see them scaling the building? you would have been shot down and he was carrying a rifle. Make it make sense to me.
Well, then hold on. We're gonna make it make sense, but we got a few comments here. Okay. So Dorothy Finney says that President Biden was classy in visiting him. Philando Castile being shot and dying in his vehicle. We witnessed that. That was awful. Patrice says, I was in for 4 hours in Dallas in line. That's supposed to be a line for 4 hours in Dallas. Yes.
3.5. Yes.
Yes. And then standing in sweltering heat. Absolutely. Yeah. So we know what it takes, but I want to pick up on that thread you said about how can that happen? Well, see, there's a couple of sayings. Well, one of them is mine. If everybody has a gun, and everybody's a target. Mm-hmm. And so in these rural communities, and not just rural communities, mm-hmm. in these jurisdictions and states that are currently led by people who classify themselves as Republicans, having someone they allow them to come to the rally. If you're outside of the perimeter, you can have your gun, right? If we recall January 6th, which some people don't want to call because to say that there's no place for political violence, but you don't call that political violence, where people had bear spray, pepper spray. They used flag poles as spears, where they had handcuffs and weapons so that they could scale the side of a building,
and they had zip
ties and many of things. So those who were at the speech, they had to go through magnetometers, but those who were like, no, we came here for disruption and stayed out of that, they had every manner of tool available to them as they went and so the irony and, like I said, the gaslighting, that spin of there's no place for political violence, when on January 6, 2021, we witnessed political violence, and you trying to tell me that it wasn't.
Right.
When at the beginning of this rally, like at the beginning of many of your other rallies, your J6, what do they call them? Hostages is what you're calling them, or patriots. You laud their behavior.
Well, listen.
Political violence is political violence. Condemn it all. If you're going to condemn it all. But don't try to gaslight me and tell me I didn't see what I saw on January 6th or on July 13th, 2024. Because my eyes work just fine.
Okay, this camera is behind again. Yes. Okay, so I agree with everything that you just said. And so what also bothers me is because we're telling people that, we need more police officers, but on January 6th, you were attacking the police officers. You're suggesting that, and then for him to get up after having been shot, like, I don't wish violence. I don't wish death on nobody. But I do wish some insight. I do wish some thoughtfulness. I do wish some, waking up or wake up call. Like this was unprecedented. In we've seen obviously assassination, but this is like people are. Cameras out, live shots, all of these things. This was unprecedented, and this could have been very, very tragic. And you get up, which you were scared, because we can see that you were scared. Mm-hmm. But you get up, you pumping your fist, and you still talking about fight.
Come on, let's pull that thread a little far.
Fight the system, and you ain't talking about fight the power, and you ain't talking about fight for equal justice and equal right. You said fight, and you have incited violence on so many occasions, and now we're confused how violence is coming to us. I don't understand this. I don't understand it.
So let's pull that thread a little further because you see, one thing I know for sure, they talk about whether you believe in God Almighty, whether you believe in Buddha, whether you believe in existentialism, whether you believe in whatever you believe in. There's one thing we know for sure. If you want to attract something, the law of attraction, that's what you speak.
Yeah.
And so when you speak violence over and over and over again, and when violence comes to you, don't be wondering why. You know, way I learned a lesson about patience. Don't pray for patience, because when you pray for patience, I think it's in Second Timothy. I don't know. I could be wrong. Y'all go look up the scripture, whatever. But if you pray for patience, you're going to get trials and tribulations, because that's what tests you in order to create patience.
Right.
So you have to be very, very careful. And we were visiting, as I said, we've been visiting, and one of my husband's friends was talking to our daughter and was just getting her, hey, rah, rah, congratulations, getting her hyped up about going to school. But he said, I want you to do one thing. He was like, one thing that I did, I always act. I was quick to act. He said, I want you to practice waiting before you act. I want you to practice waiting before you speak. I want you to practice that pause. And to me, once again, there's a failure in those who classify themselves as Republicans to practice the pause, to think and do some self-reflection on how could my behavior contribute? How can my words have contributed to what has come to my doorstep?
Right.
Because that's what happens. We call these things to us by our actions and our deeds and our words. And that, my friend, is another piece of this that we missing.
Right.
That you're missing.
Well, and again, you can't keep, people don't like, they didn't like when Malcolm X said about the chickens coming home to roost after JFK was assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like when Reverend Jeremiah Wright said something about chickens coming home to roost, and actually made President Obama distance himself from Jeremiah Wright. Maybe these are not the words that you want to hear, but the truth of the matter is you can't continue, like you said, putting stuff out in the universe, calling certain things out. You walked into a park and you had peaceful protesters attacked. Mm-hmm. You have said there's going to be a bloodbath if you're not reelected. You said what it was: stand back and stand by.
Stand back
and stand by. I will meet you at the Capitol. I can go in on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and get away with it. You have spoken all of these things. And now, again, violence is coming to your doorstep. And the first thing you do, you pumping your fist and you talking about fight. If, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, I want to know where the Christians at who's saying, why you ain't thanking God that your life was spared?
Well, but here's the other thing. So since you want to bring up the Christians, so maybe chicken coming home to roost is not the right term, the terminology that people like, but people know the parable about the sower and the reaper.
Right.
And about reaping what you sow. So if you sow violence, if you tacitly excuse this type of violent behavior, if you tacitly excuse or write laws that make guns so easily available and permissible in the state of Florida, we lowered the age for these high-powered weapons from 21 down to 18. Mm-hmm. Right? Check your state and find out what has your state legislature recently put into place. If you live in a state where there is a Republican-led government, Check your state laws, because I guarantee you it is more permissible here in Louisiana, where I am right now. Permitless carry is into the in, and they're trying to implement permitless carry everywhere. They're reducing the age in which you can have certain guns. They are the whole thing about bump stocks that just went before the Supreme Court. And they were like, no, the ruling that the Biden administration put in place about not allowing bump stock, that ruling can't stand. Watch what they are doing. And then when they have questions and conversations about, well, how could that happen here? I had no idea. I didn't believe. I didn't think. Well, we have a mass shooting every day in this country.
Yes, we do.
We've had as you said, you go back to Sandy Hook, you go back to Las Vegas, the concert outside in Las Vegas, you go back to Uvalde. And those are the big ones that made the news.
Right.
Those are the big ones that made the news. But just do a Google search. Just do a Google search. And what you're seeing every day. And also for those Christians, because they always want to talk about mental health. One thing they talk about violence, and they usually talk about violence in the context where you will talk. What is wrong with young white men? That's a conversation you need to start having. How are you raising your children? Kyle Rittenhouse. Because remember, he wanted to invite Kyle. He was proud of Kyle Rittenhouse. He wanted to invite him to come to the White House while he was president when he killed some people.
Yep.
So if you condone violence, you got to understand that what you reap, what you sow.
And then let's just go on ahead and have this conversation. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to be a production assistant a little bit here too. Oh, look, YouTube then they rejected my child. I was trying to put that the link to the mass shootings in America the apparently YouTube don't want it, but it's important for us to track these things because, like you said, there's so many happening, and we think we just hear about a handful of them. So let's talk about these guns. So we know that there has been a consistent conversation about ARs, whatever. AR-15s, all the other ARs. This is the gun. This is the gun of choice, obviously.
The gun of choice.
And this is the gun that was used. Are we ready to have a real talk about gun violence? Because I don't know how else if this isn't evidence that everybody shouldn't have a gun, I don't know what it's going to take. But like I said earlier, I can't be more outraged about this shooting than I am about what happened in Uvalde or what happened at Sandy Hook. I can't be more outraged when babies going to school are killed, or people going to
the grocery store in Buffalo, or a movie theater in Colorado,
trying to live everyday life. And we are allowing ourselves to be so desensitized to this stuff. So I can't be more outraged about this particular incident than any other incident. I think there's time for us to have a conversation, except I was in Texas, and then I see this good old nugget come across. We have now vending machines. A company in Texas has developed a vending machine for ammo.
For ammunition.
And it is specifically targeting, southern states, as will be where it will start off. Vending machines selling ammunition will now be in grocery stores in Alabama, Texas, and Oklahoma. According to the American Rounds website, the distributor of the machines, AI technology scans the customer's identification and facial recognition software to verify a customer's identity. I don't think it's verification of their identity that's the problem. I think it's verification of their mental stability and what they would be buying guns and ammo for. So I don't think we're ready to have a serious conversation, because this idea that giving people more guns is going to make us, we've already, just like the death penalty hasn't made us safer, giving more people guns has not made us safer. So let's be clear. The conversation then is not about safety.
Nope.
The conversation seems, in my opinion, to be about making sure we destroy who we really want to destroy.
And let's also be clear that when you say about, it's not just that it's not about safety. You know, we hear that argument, oh, well, guns don't kill people, people kill people. It's people.
Right.
But if they didn't have a damn gun, it wouldn't be as easy to injure, hurt, harm, or kill as many people as they do.
Right.
To say we're gonna not have school counselors, but we're gonna have chaplains in the school, and we're gonna have the 10 Commandments, but I'm not teaching you anything about yourself, you know, how to take care of yourself and protect yourself. Well, we're going to have fewer school resource officers, or we want to pass a law that allows teachers to carry guns in the classroom.
Because they need one extra thing to do.
They need one extra thing to manage. So it's not even about, okay, well, do you have the mental capacity or the mental, like you said about mental? It's not even, do you have the mental capacity, mental ability? Some people don't even have the cognitive development to make executive functioning decisions. Some people are, and this is not just on the young side too, right? Because we saw, and I can't remember, in California, the man was 60 something years old, went up in, you know, their people, cognitive ability, the level of anxiety, depression, loneliness, all of these social ills are showing their ugly faces. And when you give someone an access to a gun, we've seen the suicide rate increase. We've seen homicide rate increase. We've seen these mass shootings on a daily basis, sometimes 2 and 3 a day. Those things are real. And as you said, because I haven't heard it said explicitly, but I know it's coming. This is not the time to have that conversation, because usually after every mass shooting, that's what they say. It's not time. So I don't know who, when, why, but what I do know is that sliver who people have elected and put in office because they have an R behind their name are not even aligning in step with their constituencies. And we need to make a decision about enough is enough and too much stinks. And with these guns, enough is enough and too much stinks. And when everyone has a gun, everyone is a target. And the other saying that I was supposed to tell y'all is, like I said, it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. And too many rabbits got guns. So,
and we have more guns than we have rabbits.
People in this country. We have more guns than people in this country. And then we talk, because then we want to talk about the border, but we are exporting guns. You know how they got all that firepower over there in Haiti and Mexico? Because we send it there.
Yes.
I mean, the cartels, where they get their guns from? They get them from here, the good old US of A. So I promise you, I don't know what's going to portend for this Republican convention that's going to start on Monday. I'm already highly perturbed that they are so unserious that Amber Rose is one of the speakers.
Yeah, they're so unserious that Amber Rose is one of the speakers. And then I'm waiting for this dude to come out with a Tupac shirt on or something, because
people already making memes of Tupac, of him with 50 Cent body and all of this foolishness. Right. And all I need to say is, y'all are not serious about somebody who lost their life, other people who were injured.
Right.
You're not serious. And you're not serious about having these conversations about the proliferation and the access to weapons. We wanted to talk about WMD and weapons of mass destruction. AR-15s are weapons of mass destruction. They are guns made for war. They're modified guns from the battlefield, and we don't need them. We don't need them in society. That's what I'm saying. So let's see. We got another comment here. Let me show this comment. It says, when I saw AR as a speaker, Amber Rose, I was like, really? You could have done better, huh? But they don't want to do better. They're trying to attract a certain demographic. So
I think it goes back to what we've talked about many times before. When you have certain people who identify as Black Americans as speakers, and they are not the best of the best, they're not the brightest, they're not, I don't really know why anybody knows her name anyway. It speaks to what people really think about us overall.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't agree with the politics of a Condoleezza Rice, but don't insult my intelligence with an Amber Rose.
Yeah. Well, I kind of did a modify on this last thing, because this is what I don't want y'all to do. I don't want y'all to lose focus, because it was unfortunate. It is unfortunate that this happened. It's unfortunate that I'm not going to say there's no place for violence in this country, because the truth is this country was founded on violence. I mean, you try to erase people who was the original peoples here. So, and you fought an American Revolution so you can get away from the rule of the British who sent you over here to colonize this land. So stop it. But so I don't want us to lose focus. So I'm going to put these two together, because at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, I want y'all to stop Democrats with y'all weak, spineless behinds, and y'all no-name Democrat. Y'all need to hush and stop talking about Joe Biden and his age and how he should drop out the race. Because if the man who was on the stage yesterday, and thank God that he was not hurt and harmed, but if they are not calling for this person to drop out the race, who, if you go see the Epstein transcripts that are public now from 2016, who was already in a civil court convicted of sexual assault, in another court who was found guilty of fraudulent business practice, in another court who was found guilty of 34 felonies for business, for the document, it wasn't that documents case, but it's falsifying business records, falsifying things, who also then, after having been in that civil court found guilty for sexual assault, then was found guilty for defaming that woman, who he said, if they're not calling for him to drop out the race, y'all need to hush. And when he said he knows nothing about Project 2025, he also said the other day he never heard of NATO. So if someone who wants to be the leader of the free world, he had only heard about NATO like a couple years ago, then they don't he's not a student of history, he's not a student of the government. Then when they have this whole heritage foundation, they got a whole plan that they've been putting forth for the last 50 years. If all of this is not disqualifying, then y'all need to shut your mouths about Joe Biden's age, and you need to up and down. 423 congressional seats are open. 33 Senate seats are open. There are other seats that are available in your local jurisdiction, from your school board all the way up to your some judgeships to councilmen and what have you. But it's the president alone is not who we have to be. We have to be concerned with the people they surround themselves with. And these Epstein transcripts and this Project 2025 tells you who he surrounds himself with. And that alone should be disqualifying. And he should not be on anybody's ticket. But they're willing to accept that. But as we said, when you start accepting one thing, what happens then when it comes knocking at your door? So don't lose focus, people. Don't lose focus.
Well, I agree with everything that you said there, sister. I will just add, we did not, before yesterday, we thought we were going to be having a conversation about these repeated calls for President Biden to step down. And again, I don't think that is a win-win situation unless you're telling me that the Democratic Party is going to put its full weight behind the vice president, which they haven't even a lot of them haven't called her name, which is disrespectful and is egregious, especially to Black voters who have done so much to prop up the Democratic Party. And it was very interesting how all the people calling for him to step down, they kind of all look the same. They kind of all, they did find a brother in New York. I think the lieutenant governor of New York, New Jersey, somewhere. But other than that, it was predominantly white men and women, many of whom,
as they said, the square-jawed, crew-cutted,
many of whom I personally hadn't heard of, no. Right? So I feel like that was a part of their personal strategies, as you said, 435, I believe 33, whatever the number is, seats that are up. I felt like that was self-serving in many ways for folks to get themselves out in front of the public eye, because many people don't necessarily know who they are. And so just this week, that was what was dominating the news cycle. And then obviously this situation took place. And I think it's egregious that if there's ever a conversation about who should be next in line, and if our good sis ain't coming up, then it's egregious. It's egregious if you calling any other names before the vice president of the United States. The second aspect of that, but again, I said before, that's why this whole conversation about age came up in the first place, because these both people they knocking on the same door. So it ain't like one is so significantly younger than the other. So we know what that's really about. Again, if the GOP stood behind if the GOP is standing behind Donald Trump with what they know today, and that just scratches the surface. If the GOP stood behind Ronald Reagan when they knew he had dementia, not thought it, knew it. If we continue to see they are standing behind their candidate because they want to win, and they want to win because power is more important than anything. Things like Project 2025 are intended to further oppress.
Mm-hmm.
and to keep certain people in power. So if they're not calling for that person, like you said, you listed all the other reasons. Hell, just the Billy Bush comment should have been enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, I dropped in again, a link to the Project 2025. I know Joy and Reed supposed to do a whole show on it tomorrow. I posted and shared some stuff on my various sites about it. There's a lot of information about it. But even when you just go into the first few pages and you see the potential people who could be cabinet officers.
Right.
These are the same people who want to do away with the FBI, but they sure want the FBI to be working right now.
Right.
They want to do away with the Department of Education because then they want to take the public resources for dollars and fund these Christian schools and the parochial schools and the charter schools that don't have the same level of standards. Their teachers don't have to be certified. And if you go look at the educational outcomes of most of them, they don't even meet the same standards as public schools because they don't have to. If your child's on a 504 IEP, they can just put them out. They don't have to do any type of accommodation. See, that's the long game that you got to think about. So read it and look at it with a third eye. Listen to what people are saying with a third ear. But these Epstein transcripts. These Epstein transcripts. I mean, this is a credible allegation from a 13-year-old and 12-year-old about being forced to have sex with that man. And Stormy Daniels was 27 when he was 60 whatever years old. I'm gonna tell you. Listen, if you believe that someone who has filed bankruptcy 6 times is a good steward of dollars, but also those fraudulent business practices, that's why he can't even do business in the state of New York for I don't know how many years now, is a good steward of your dollars. You need to understand that you're being duped once again.
Here's the thing, sister. We're never going to get people who don't want to understand to understand. So I am not asking them to understand. I am asking those of us who know better to do better.
And to show up.
And to show up. Because here's the thing, one thing you alluded to it, but I'm going to jump into it a little bit more before we wrap up. The fact that what happened yesterday, one of the first things people questioned was whether or not it was staged. That speaks volumes. Like you said, that speaks volumes about us, but it speaks a lot about him. There's just been so many lies and so many allegations and so many convictions and so many bad business deals. And there's just been and has promised to do hurt or harm to his political enemies if he is reelected. This is a bad person. Like we were reading in Sunday school earlier today. It's just some people who are just evil people out there. And this is an evil person. And if you know that the person is an evil person, the fact that the first thing that came to mind, not that the former president of the United States was almost assassinated in front of hundreds of or thousands of people. The first thing that for a lot of people was, it's not even real. It's staged. That says so much. And that's so unfortunate. And so, I can't make people who are hell bent on deceiving themselves because all the evidence is there. So I can't make people who are hell bent on deceiving themselves change their mind. I'm disgusted and frustrated with the Democratic Party for not having a strategy at this particular moment, or at least not appearing to have a strategy and appearing to be disjointed and incapable of having a consensus on the in the public eye when, again, we see what's on the other side, and ain't nobody calling for him to drop out. That's a problem.
Big problem. Bigly problem.
Yes.
A bigly problem. So for all of us who are, and like I said, I'm independent. I'm just trying to save the world. You are independent. You just trying to save the world. Black women are still trying to save the world, child, even though when nobody's trying to save us. So what I want everybody to do is make sure that you have your plan for voting. If you need absentee voting, if you have a child that is of voting age, make sure that they are registered. If they are going off to college, make sure that they vote. Which is the best jurisdiction for you to vote, for them to vote in? Is it where they're going to school at and they need to register there, or is it back in your home state? Because your home state is one of those that's a what do they call them? Not toss up, but
battleground state.
A battleground state. You know, those are the type of decisions that and conversations that need to be had, and everybody that you know needs to. Here's the thing: if the Democrats ain't been talking about turning out the vote, and that's all the conversation should be at this point, is turning out the vote for 423 congressional seats, 33 Senate seats, 1 presidency. But that one presidency will dictate all your cabinet
and your Supreme Court.
Your Supreme Court, the shaping of what your future, not just your Supreme Court, but all your federal court system.
Yeah.
If all of that does not scare you, and as you observe what happened on yesterday, and you're not attuned to the legislation that's happening at your local level, that's allowing a 20-year-old to have access to AR-15, if you tired of it, you can do something about it. And that's all we ask you to do, something about it.
Yeah.
Be smart, be wise. And then I'm not saying you have to vote all Democrat, but choose somebody that got some damn common sense and that's actually going to do work on your behalf.
Or just choose somebody who's not a criminal. Because if you were a criminal, would you be in a position to run for president of the United States? No, you would not.
Well, okay. There's that. How about that? So with that, we signing off for Hey Sister. We went a little over tonight, but we appreciate y'all for hanging in. Make sure you share this episode with someone who you think would benefit from the conversation and have them join the Hey Sister family. So with that, we signing off. Good night, everybody.
Good night.